Imagine moving into your dream farmhouse, only to discover that something evil is already living there. Doors slam by themselves, footsteps echo in empty rooms, and your family isn't alone. This is the true story of the house that terrified the parents, and it's still standing today. If you love real haunted stories and want to uncover more terrifying places, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join us on every spine-chilling adventure. The Amityville House. I remember the first time I stood in front of the Amityville house. It was late afternoon, and the street looked peaceful, almost too peaceful. Trees were moving slowly in the wind, and the neighborhood looked like any normal suburban area in America. Families lived nearby, cars were parked quietly along the road, and nothing about the place seemed frightening at first. But the moment I looked at the house, something felt strange. Maybe it was the famous half-moon windows on the top floor. They almost looked like eyes staring back at you. I had seen pictures of the house many times before, but seeing it in person felt completely different. It's one of those places where the moment you remember its history, the entire atmosphere changes. The story everyone knows begins on November 13, 1974. That night, a 23-year-old man named Ronald DeFeo Jr. walked through the rooms of this very house with a rifle. One by one, he shot 6 members of his own family while they slept, his parents and 4 siblings. According to police reports, the victims were found lying face down in their beds. What made the case even more disturbing was how quiet everything seemed. Neighbors later told police they didn't hear loud gunshots during the night. For years, people questioned how something so violent could happen in such silence. Standing there outside the house, I kept imagining the scene from that night. The dark hallway, the quiet bedrooms, and the entire neighborhood asleep while something terrible was happening inside. But the story didn't end there. About a year later, a new family moved into the house. George and Kathy Lutz bought the property at a surprisingly low price. They knew about the murders, but they believed the tragedy belonged to the past. They were wrong. The Lutz family later claimed that strange things began happening almost immediately. George said he would wake up at exactly 3:15 a.m. every night, the same time investigators believed the murders had taken place. The family also reported strange sounds, doors slamming, and cold spots moving through the house. Some people believe their story, others think it was exaggerated. But standing on that quiet street, staring at the house in front of me, I realized something important. Even without the paranormal stories, the tragedy that happened there is completely real. 6 lives ended inside those walls in a single night. The house itself looks calm today. Clean windows, quiet yard, just another home sitting along a peaceful street. Yet when I finally turned away and started walking back down the road, I couldn't shake the feeling that some places carry their history with them. And this house definitely does. 2. The Villisca Axe Murder House. The first time I stood outside the Villisca Axe Murder House, the street felt too quiet. Villisca is a small town, the kind of place where nothing unusual seems to happen. Old houses, empty sidewalks, and a calm feeling in the air. But I already knew that more than 100 years ago, something happened inside that small white house that people here still whisper about. It was the night of June 9th, 1912. Earlier that evening, the Moore family had gone to church like any normal Sunday. Josiah Moore, his wife Sarah, and their 4 children returned home later that night. 2 young girls, Lena and Ina Stillinger, who were friends of the family, stayed over as guests. 8 people slept inside the house that night, but none of them woke up the next morning. The next day, a neighbor became worried when the Moore family didn't come outside for their usual morning routine. When someone finally entered the house, they found something horrifying. Every single person inside had been murdered with an axe. Police reports say the victims were attacked while they slept,
room by room. When I learned that detail, it stayed in my mind while I looked at the house. The killer had quietly moved through the dark hallway, entering each bedroom one after another. What makes the case even more disturbing is that the murderer was never officially caught. I slowly walked closer to the house, looking at the windows. It's not a large place at all. In fact, it's smaller than most modern homes. That made the story feel even heavier. 8 people in such a small space, and no one escaped. Inside the house today, investigators have reported strange experiences. Some claim to hear footsteps upstairs when no one is there. Others say doors close by themselves. Paranormal teams who stayed overnight have even recorded unexplained sounds. Standing outside, I tried to imagine what the street looked like in 1912. No cars, no bright lights, just darkness and silence. Somewhere inside that house, someone moved through the rooms holding an axe while the entire town slept. That thought alone gave me chills. The strange thing about the Villisca Axe murder house is that the real horror is already enough. 8 real people died there. Families were destroyed overnight. And even after more than a century, the mystery of who did it remains unsolved. As I stepped away from the house and looked back one last time, it seemed completely ordinary again. Just a small wooden home sitting quietly on a peaceful street. But once you know what happened there, it never feels like just a house anymore. 3. The Winchester Mystery House. The first time I walked toward the Winchester Mystery House, I honestly thought people were exaggerating the stories. From the outside, it already looked strange, but I wasn't prepared for how confusing it would feel once I stepped closer. The house is huge, but something about it feels unsettled, almost like it was never meant to be finished. The story of this place begins with a woman named Sarah Winchester. She was the widow of William Winchester, whose family owned the famous Winchester Repeating Arms Company. After her husband and young daughter died, Sarah inherited a massive fortune, but according to many historical accounts, she believed the spirits of people killed by Winchester rifles were haunting her family. In 1886, she moved to California and bought a small farmhouse, but the strange part is what happened next. Construction on the house never stopped. Builders worked on the mansion day and night for nearly 38 years. When I first learned that, I thought it sounded impossible. But walking around the property makes it feel real. The building kept expanding again and again, turning into a maze of hallways, staircases, and rooms that seemed to lead nowhere. As I moved along the outside garden path, I could see windows placed in strange locations and staircases that simply ended at ceilings. Some doors inside the house reportedly opened straight into walls. Others once opened into empty air before parts of the structure were later rebuilt. The guides say Sarah believed constant construction would confuse the spirits that were supposedly following her. Whether that belief was real or exaggerated by newspapers of that time is still debated today. But one thing is certain. The house truly was under construction almost every single day until Sarah Winchester died in 1922. When I finally looked up at the mansion again, it felt less like a normal home and more like a puzzle someone never finished solving. More than 160 rooms, twisting hallways, hidden doors, all built by one woman who may have been trying to outrun something no one else could see. Some visitors today claim they hear footsteps in empty corridors or feel sudden cold spots in certain rooms. Paranormal investigators often talk about strange sounds recorded late at night. Of course, not everyone believes those stories, but standing there in front of the house, I realized something interesting. Even without ghosts, the place already feels mysterious. Imagine living inside a house where construction never stops, where workers are building new rooms every day, and where the layout slowly turns into a maze. As I walked away from the property, I kept thinking about Sarah Winchester herself. Was she really haunted by guilt and fear? Or was she simply a lonely woman building something unusual with her endless fortune? No one knows for sure, but one thing is clear: the house she left behind is still one of the strangest homes ever built in America. 4. The LaLaurie Mansion. The night I walked past the LaLaurie Mansion, the air in the street felt heavy. New Orleans is a city full of music, noise, and people, but the moment I turned onto Royal Street, something felt different. The building itself looks beautiful from the outside: tall walls, large windows, classic architecture. If you didn't know the history, you might think it was just another historic mansion in the French Quarter. But the history of this house is one of the darkest stories I've ever read. In the early 1800s, the mansion belonged to a wealthy woman named Delphine LaLaurie. She was known in society as a polite and elegant host. Rich guests attended her parties, and from the outside, her life looked perfect. But behind the walls of that house, something terrible was happening. The truth started to come out in 1834. One morning, a fire broke out inside the mansion's kitchen. When firefighters arrived and forced their way inside the house, they discovered something that shocked the entire city. Hidden upstairs were enslaved people who had been severely abused and chained in secret rooms. Historical newspapers from that time describe horrifying conditions. Some victims were found tied to walls, others trapped in small spaces. The story spread quickly through New Orleans, and within hours, a furious crowd gathered outside the mansion. As I stood across the street, trying to imagine that moment in history, I could almost picture the chaos. According to records, the angry crowd eventually stormed the house after hearing what had been discovered inside. But by the time they got there, Delphine LaLaurie had already escaped and fled the city. No one knows exactly where she went after that. The mansion itself was badly damaged that same year, but over time it was rebuilt. Today, the building still stands, looking strangely calm for a place connected to such a disturbing past. Locals in New Orleans often say the house feels different at night. Some residents claim they've heard strange sounds coming from inside when the building was empty. Others talk about whispers or footsteps echoing through the upper floors. Of course, stories like that are difficult to prove. But standing there in the quiet street, it was impossible not to think about what happened inside those walls nearly 2 centuries ago. The most unsettling part is that the horror here isn't just a legend. The historical records are real. The fire in 1834 was real. The victims discovered inside that house were real. As I slowly walked away from Royal Street, I looked back one last time at the mansion. In the dim streetlight, the windows looked completely dark, and for a moment, the whole place felt less like a beautiful old building and more like a silent reminder of a very dark piece of history. 5. The Conjuring House. The road that leads to the Conjuring House is the kind of road where you start to feel the silence before you even see the house. Trees on both sides, long stretches of open land, and almost no traffic. When I finally saw the farmhouse in the distance, it looked old but peaceful, like a place where nothing unusual should ever happen. But the history of this house says otherwise. The farmhouse was built in the 1700s and stood there quietly for generations before one particular family moved in. In 1971, Roger and Carolyn Perrin arrived with their 5 daughters, hoping to start a new life in the countryside. At first, everything about the house seemed normal. It was large, historic, and surrounded by beautiful land. But according to the Perrin family, the strange things started slowly. Carolyn Perrin later explained in interviews that small things would happen around the house. At first, they were easy to ignore: a chair that seemed slightly out of place, a door that slowly opened by itself. Sometimes a broom would fall over when no one was near it. In an old house, things like that can happen, so the family didn't think much about it. But as the weeks passed, the atmosphere inside the house began to feel different. I remember standing near the edge of the property, imagining those early nights. Out there, when darkness falls, it becomes incredibly quiet. No city noise, no bright lights, just wind moving through the trees and an old house sitting in the middle of it all. The Perrin daughters later described hearing footsteps moving through empty rooms. Sometimes they felt sudden cold spots while walking through the hallways. One of the girls even said she felt like someone was watching her from the corners of the rooms. Eventually, the family contacted well-known paranormal investigators Ed Warren and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens were already famous for investigating strange cases across the United States. After visiting the house, they believed the property might have a long and complicated history connected to the land itself. Over time, the Perrin family's experiences became widely known. Their story later inspired the horror film The Conjuring, which brought international attention to the farmhouse. Of course, not everyone believes the house is truly haunted. Some people say the strange events were simply the result of living in a very old building. Others believe the Perrin family genuinely experienced something they couldn't explain. Standing there outside the farmhouse, watching the wind move across the open field, it was impossible not to think about the nights that family spent inside those walls. The house looked quiet, completely still, but sometimes the quietest places carry the loudest stories.